Da 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 da! What's my good chair? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. Let people know I've gone live. And in the meantime, if you've never met me before, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And we've been working on our 58th word in the past couple of days. And I wanted to kind of take a look at this word that we've got, despite, and look at it in a different perspective. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how did that even make it to the list? That word. But I'm telling you, I'm getting so many lessons out of this. I'm getting a little bit of mirroring of myself, a little bit of understanding of some of those personal traits that I have, those quirky things that each one of us have. But sometimes we just knock it up as personality, but we don't really delve into why these traits are there. And whether or not these traits are even good traits or bad traits, we just say, oh, that's part of us, right? Not even looking at whether this is something that can be changed or if we even want to change it or if it's something that we really, really want to expand in and right, really delve into it and do some work with that and see if it's something that we can get out of our lives, get off of our chests, right? This word despite that we got this week, it made it to the list because it was my one word throughout my life. There was a lot of rejection in my life, a lot of, you know, dismissing my intelligence, not wanting me to be seen, to be heard. I wrote some of these things down, questioning my capabilities, right? Attacking my emotional, mental, and most definitely my physical well-being. It caused a lot of havoc in my life. And I have given thought as to, how I dealt with that because obviously, right, I didn't allow it to impact me as much as it could have or possibly should have. I'm here, right? I'm divvying out these lessons and these experiences and in these adventures in an optimistic idea that maybe somebody might see that own mirror for themselves in my experience in being that evidence of that our problems, our limitations, those things that we beat ourselves up for, those things that we look at ourselves as handicaps when sometimes they're not even handicaps. We only think of them as handicaps because somebody else told us that it was so. And we believed it, right? And sometimes it is in that patterning. Sometimes it's in that consistently, you're no good, or that constant dismissal, again, like I said, of our capability or emotional or mental well-being. I was an obese kid. That was attacked daily from the very youngest of age to well into my adulthood, I would have to say, into my late 20s. Like it did rack havoc in my life. So I look at this word despite today and I'm thinking, how did it make it to the list? Well, it made it to the list because it saved me, right? It's kind of like that idea when they say, in the motivation and that inspiration that sometimes in our rejections that we overcome ourselves. We get I'll show you kind of attitude. And we make these great achievements in our lives. And I'm thinking, I picked up this word despite, probably from my father, possibly my grandmother, who was very adamant that I had in my choices the capability to create amazing life for myself despite what anybody thought of me, what anybody made me think of myself, right? And it is what it is, right? It's my responsibility to have even noticed what was going on, right? But sometimes we're so busy staring off at that we don't see the answers right in front of us. And today, at 62 years old, I kind of get it why this word despite made it to my list of 54 powerful words, because it was my never give up, right? That was my joy. That was my chance to create the best human being I possibly could. And knowing that I had every right to try to do that, right? Starting my YouTube channel when I was in my 50s, right? I was in my 50s, I think, when I started my YouTube channel. And in that time, there was no baby boomers online. It took COVID to bring the baby boomers online, because if they didn't get online, they wouldn't have been able to talk to their kids on the other side of the country, or on the other side of the world. They wouldn't have been able to interact with their grandchildren, right? For a few years. We got locked down pretty good. There were lots of amazing things that came out of that COVID hitting us. For myself, it was a miracle. It gave me a running chance at overcoming a serious addiction that I had. And for those of you who have been with me for any length of time, you know that I was a compulsive gambler, right? I tried so many, and I was locked in for a couple of decades, you guys, into those video lottery terminals. I destroyed my marriage. I destroyed my light and my happiness and that amazing life that I created for myself. And not just created that life for myself, like I said, in a span of a few years, I created the most amazing life, and that included others. And in taking that shine from me, I took those possibilities, those potentials, right? That just kind of dwindled out of my life until I found myself right back where I started. I fixed the outside without fixing the inside. That's exactly what I did, right? But I took my piece of the pie and I tried again, right? And I tried again, and I failed and failed and failed. And then I found my YouTube channel, right? And all my effort, time, and few resources had to go to that brand. It was my lifeline. I clung on to my brand like it was a lifesaver, and it wasn't. No matter what anybody said, despite what anybody thought of me. And that was pretty cuckoo, right? I was out there exploring abandoned farms, abandoned houses, right? One room schoolhouses with floors so rotten that I could fall through, right? And yet I was pulled to do that, and I found joy in that, and I found peace for myself in that. And I found mindset because despite no matter what anybody was saying, I was keeping my brand, but I needed help with that, right? So despite my limitations, despite my problems, right? Despite I searched out answers. And in searching out those answers, I was able to release one addiction. And again, like I said, put my time, money, right? All my resources and effort into keeping my brand going. And in keeping my brand going, I was rewarded with the gift of positivity, of inspiration, of motivation, an opportunity to make a different choice. And bang, right? Started waking up to a few of these ideas. But despite, right, it doesn't sound like a very positive, powerful word, does it? But I tell you, it's in the rewards that despite the obstacles, despite other people's ideas and projections, and you can't do it or you don't have the right, that despite all that, despite ourselves, despite those limitations in our own lives, right? That we just step out of ourselves and we do it anyway. But I said I was going to look at this word despite a little bit differently today in that negative tone. And so I can see the fragility of that, I don't know, preteen, right? That teenager, that adult who had to toughen up, right? I wrote here, right? That one word despite came to me because of the rejection of my efforts, right? In the dismissals of my capability, right? The dismissing of any knowledge or anything of my ideas and those creative, right? Ways that I was able to get out of problems. I was a great problem solver, right? But it was just all dismissed, right? It all comes from the rejection of me, right? Of my emotional well being, my mental well being, and, right, being an obese child, teenager, adult, my physical well being. And that was a rejection I had to absorb every single day of my life. And after a while, that rejection I was looking at in the mirror, right? Despite it saved my life, but that was a hard way to learn, right? Because it comes from rejection and dismissal, right? And it impacted my trust issues, right? It impacted trust. It made me hyper vigilant in that, didn't it? Right? It made me build walls, right? Made me toughen up, become independent. And that's what it did. It created this very independent, creative, right, woman that sometimes I think I could be my own instigator, but at the same time, I have beliefs that, that I have been my own instigator, and it's in my course correction that I'm doing now, right? And so the pushback is despite the way that I've always been moving, going to move a little bit different, right? Despite being tough and independent, going to try and be soft because there's lots of help out there. There's lots of good influence. There's lots of really amazing human beings that are stumbling along themselves, right? Trying to create the best human being they possibly can, despite what's going on in their surroundings, despite what's going on in their own life, and despite what's being stared at them in the mirror, right? Despite what I'm lacking in those lessons in the moment, and despite any lessons that I may have picked up along the way and am using in my steering and feeling and sniffing out of what resonates with me, right? I'm going to do it anyway, right? Sometimes we do butt heads with good advice, right? But sometimes we butt heads with bad advice by good intentioned, right? People or souls or creators along the way, right? I'm going to say it because it does take all kinds to make the world, right? And being despite, right? It's a hard word. It's a tough word, but it made it into my list of 54 powerful words. Came across my path for a reason, and I've been thinking about it today, right? In amongst trying to have a nice, relaxing, Cindy filled day. Relaxing, right? Doing nothing. And I got up, I did a few things, but very, very little. But obviously, by my scribbles, right? Still in the lessons, right? Still in the lessons. And being fair in those lessons, because if there's anything, right? Nobody could accuse me of not being fair, right? Not taking my fair share of responsibility for where I'm at in the moment and where I've been, why it took me so long to get here, right? And who's to say how long it's going to get me or take me to get me where I need to be? Who knows? But despite those limitations, despite not knowing, I'm still moving forward with it, right? Because I see the evidence in my life and I'm taking in the lessons, right? I'm going to try and be a little bit softer, right, in the lessons, but at the same time, in my hypervigilance and being my own caregiver, my own bodyguard, my own best friend, right? Recognizing that's not always the case when I look out, right, into my surroundings. So I'm going to send a little bit of gratefulness to the baby steps, to the baby spoonfuls, right? It's taking me a little bit longer, but at the same time, right, I'm enjoying the views and I'm enjoying the experience and I'm adding, right? I get I get to be a part of this experience, right? By not rejecting myself, because that was the greatest gift I could have ever, ever possibly have given myself, because, right, it was a lesson I picked up along the way, right? The only reason I'm not rejecting myself in this moment is because of the evidence, right? And that evidence was not in me rejecting myself, but how I started rejecting myself, the actual cause of why I was rejecting myself. And, right, I got to take responsibility for my part in that too, right? Right? It is always an interaction, and whether that interaction is between me and those other parts of me, or me, those other parts of me, and what's going on. And sometimes, right, Cindy will cower in the corner and say, "Hey, this one's yours," right? And sometimes Cindy has to come forward and say, "Okay, I'm in this one. This is where I'm going to shine. But I'm going to show up, and I'm going to do the very best that I can with whatever comes across my path," right? I ride the waves, but I still absorb the lessons. I'm still treading the water, right? Sometimes it is in that hypervigilance, but I'm a work in progress, and we are all a work in progress. Everybody, have a great night. I'll be back tomorrow.